My parents divorced. My sister insisted on choosing our mother, who took all the property, while my father, who left the marriage with nothing, took me with him. Later, my sister hated our mother for forcing her into a marriage at convenience, and hated the Buddhist-like man for his cold and desireless nature. In a fit of anger, she had an affair with the gangster with whom she had previously failed to elope. When their affair was exposed, she was imprisoned by the Buddhist-like man until she died. My father made a comeback and became the richest man in one fell swoop. I became the much-envied daughter of the richest man and eventually married the love-struck prince of the capital circle. When I opened my eyes again, my sister grabbed my father's hand, her smile wild. This time, it's my turn to be the daughter of the richest man. I smiled. Compared to living under the thumb of a stepmother and having a father who needed my advice to become the richest man, I much preferred my mother, who wholeheartedly planned for her daughter. When Violet broke free from my mother's hand and ran to my father's side, I knew she had been reborn too. Dad, I want to be with you. I don't want to be separated from you. Even though you left the marriage with nothing, I've always remembered your kindness. I'll go with you. Apart from me, both my parents looked at Violet in surprise. Because just a second ago Violet was still holding my mother's hand tightly. Only I knew that she changed her mind suddenly because, like me, she had been reborn. After all, when my parents divorced, the family's property was left in my mother's hands. In the past life, Violet didn't want to lie the life of instability, and couldn't bear to part with the glory and wealth of the previous 20-odd years. Before my parents completely separated, she cried in my mother's arms all night to get the chance to stay. That later my mother chose a marriage partner for her, also a so-called Buddhist son, in the capital circle, Asher. He came from an illustrious family. Although he was called a Buddhist son, he was indeed someone that all the high society ladies wanted to marry. But Violet didn't want to. She firmly believed that her mother had treated her like an item. So on the second day of their marriage, she had an affair with the gangster with him she had previously failed to elope. It was said that Violet, seeking excitement, specifically chose a time when Asher was not at home and did that thing right outside his meditation room. After Asher found out, he came back and directly demolished that house. He also left Violet in a villa on the halfway up the mountain, where she was left to keep company with monkeys all day long. As for me, after leaving with my penniless father, we led a poor life for 3 years. 3 years later, my father made a comeback, and I suddenly became the daughter of the richest man, dressing up in jewels and going in and out of high-end places every day. Later, I even married the love-struck prince of the capital circle. But unexpectedly, one day, after work, I was hit by a car that ran wild into the road guardrail. My waist and pelvis were almost shattered. Before I died, I saw Violet's face distorted with ferocity behind the windshield. She hated me, but even more she hated herself for making the wrong choice. So as soon as she was reborn, she let go of my mother's hand and chose what she thought was the best alternative. Little did she know that my father had a mistress outside with whom he was deeply in love. If it weren't for some leverage against him, would he have left the marriage with nothing? But seeing Violet's confident look, my father was deeply touched. You, Ladine, do you really want to go with Dad? Don't worry. Even if I have to sell everything, I'll take good care of you. Violet wiped her tears. While showing her loyalty, she didn't forget to take a dig at me. Thank you, Dad. But I'm different from my sister. I'm not afraid of hardship. My sister likes a good life. So let her stay at home. I didn't bother to explain and simply took my mother's arm, following her words. Mom, having fulfilled my obsession, then I'll be with you. My sister would rather follow Dad and live on the streets than be with us. Mom, don't be angry with her. In a fit of anger, my mother threw a bank card to Violet. I won't shortchange you the living expenses. Go live a hard life with your scumbag father. Before leaving, Violet dragged her suitcase and looked at me with a smile, her eyes full of provocation. This time, it's my turn to be the daughter of the richest man. Looking at the burning light in her eyes, I smiled and said, let's wait and see. Compared to living under the thumb of a stepmother and having a father who needed my advice to become the richest man, I much preferred my mother, who wholeheartedly planned for her daughter. Everyone only saw that I gloriously married the prince of the capital circle, but no one knew that after he married me home, he tormented me in every possible way. After all, he only saw me as a substitute for his unattainable first love. When the prince's love-struck syndrome flared up, I had to practice the smile of his first love in front of the mirror thousands of times. Otherwise, what awaited me was endless humiliation and abuse. Fortunately, this time my dear sister could take my place. Different from what I experienced in my previous life. Staying with my mother, I had the best of everything in terms of food, clothing, and daily use. She arranged my after-school life to be full with courses, like piano equestria zones, and golf, taking turns every day. These were things I didn't even dare to dream of in my previous life. The only drawback was that she was very cold. So cold that it was as if I were a stranger. She made me learn these things just as a routine. On my 22nd birthday, instead of coming home, my mother gave me Asher's contact information as a birthday gift. Marrying the grandson of the Asher family can double the family's assets. I had long expected this day, so I just nodded and memorized the number firmly. Seeing my calmness, my mother frowned slightly. Although it's a business marriage, Asher's mother has been gone for more than 10 years. You won't have any complicated family relationships after marrying into his family. As long as you keep your place, you'll be guaranteed wealth and safety for the rest of your life. Looking at my mother's indifferent face, I nodded seriously. Got it. Thank you, Mom. My mother's furrowed brows relaxed a bit, then she said worriedly, tomorrow, Asher will come to ask you out. Behave well and don't mess it up. Okay. Asher, I only saw him once at their wedding in my previous life. Truly worthy of being called a Buddhist son, he carried an air of being aloof from worldly affairs yet exuded a sense of authority without getting angry. After thinking it over, I took the initiative to add him as a friend. To avoid being rejected, I took the initiative to say, hello, I'm Scarlet. Is it okay to meet at Kongxing Square tomorrow noon? When I saw the reply okay from the other side, I let out a sigh of relief. In my previous life, I followed my father, and as soon as he left home, he took me to his mistress's place. The mistress was two-faced, even worse than the stepmother in Cinderella. I had to go to school and take care of all the housework at the same time, and I even had to trim her toenails neatly. After graduating from university, I seized a business opportunity. But at that time, I was still inexperienced and could only rely on my father's connections to get started. However, at the same time, I could only watch helplessly as my hard-earned efforts fell into the hands of my biological father and stepmother. After marrying the prince, I was forced to gain pounds in 3 days. Just because the prince wanted me to be a perfect substitute, and my weight also had to be as close as possible. Compared with these, being proactive with Asher was nothing. To facilitate this marriage, I arrived early the next day. But as soon as I arrived, I saw that tall and slender figure through the glass. Asher. I called softly and walked over. And the person turned around accordingly. Different from what I remembered. Asher's brows and eyes had a bit more softness. Scarlet. The first meeting wasn't as awkward as I had imagined. Naturally, he slightly opened his arms to me. And after a moment of hesitation, I summoned up my courage and took his arm. But just as we took 2 steps, a figure suddenly rushed out from the side. Scarlet. She tried to pull my hand away like crazy, pulling and tugging on the first meeting. You're so improper. I was caught off guard. But Asher protected me and stepped back half a step. After taking a closer look, I realized it was my dear sister, Violet. TSK. Haven't seen her for half a year. Her face had become much rougher, and there were several fine lines under her eyes. I deliberately exclaimed in surprise, Sister? Why are you handing out flyers here after graduating from university? Violet looked down at herself, then sized me up. Who was exquisitely dressed. Even at a normal social distance, I could hear her teeth grinding. Asher's brows furrowed slightly, and his left hand protected me in front of him. Who is this? I pretended to be embarrassed and smiled, sorry for the laugh. This is also my sister. But she lives with my father and has severed ties with my mother. As soon as I finished speaking, Violet suddenly and awkwardly hid the flyers in her hand behind her back. You must be Asher, right? I'm her sister. When our parents divorced and each was to take 1 child, my sister chose my mother because she disliked my father for leading the marriage with nothing. I felt sorry for her and didn't want her to suffer. So I went with my father. After saying that, she gave a bitter smile. But sister, it's so nice to see you living such a good life now. I raised my eyebrows. Had she learned to be shrewd under the influence of the stepmother? She could even use those kind of tea-like words now? Just as I was about to refute, Asher gave a faint hen. Scarlet does live a pretty good life. And it's not bad that you earn money by handing out flyers yourself. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Truly worthy of being a Buddhist son. He saw through Violet's little tricks clearly. Violet's expression froze for a moment. And the flyers in her hand were crumpled. I leaned half into Asher's arms. Asher. Shall we go? Let's not delay my sister's work. Before we left, Violet managed to keep up appearances. But as soon as we walked away, she couldn't help but stomp her feet and go crazy. She probably forgot that the opposite of the square was a mole, and the glass could reflect. Thanks to Violet. Just now, Asher and I were just arm in arm. But now I'm completely encircled in his arms. My face turned slightly red. And I tried to move away a little. But Asher tight and the hand that was holding me. The wedding is coming soon. Consider this as getting used to it in advance. His expression was calm. But my face suddenly flushed. I know you're marrying me because of family pressure. We just need to respect each other. If you don't want to have a wedding, we don't have to. I said this from his perspective. But Asher suddenly stopped in his tracks. He slightly frowned and looked down at me. Who said I'm doing this because of family pressure? If I didn't want to get married, they couldn't force me. I blinked in a bit of a daze. But didn't you become a monk? I just believe in Buddhism. I eat vegetarian food and chant Buddha's name. But I haven't become a monk yet. I suddenly realized. Not a monk? Then why didn't he touch Violet even once in the previous life? By the time I came to my senses, we were already on the floor where the furniture was. Asher motioned with his chin towards those pieces of furniture. I've already decorated the bridal chamber. Choose the furniture according to what you like. After that, he stuffed a black card into my hand. I looked at him. Flattered. He said inferiorly, it's necessary for getting married. This was completely different from what I had imagined. As our eyes met, Asher chuckled and seemingly casually stroked my head. For your own home. Aren't you going to buy the furniture? His warm fingertips gently passed through my hair. I held the bank card and lowered my head, biting my lips. Feeling my heart pounding wildly, I silently recited sinful. Asher gave me the key to the bridal chamber and also went to the Civil Affairs Bureau with me to register our marriage. On the day we got the marriage certificate, I deliberately posted a moment on my WeChat Moments. Sure enough, within 10 minutes, my phone started ringing nonstop. Violet seemed to be extremely frustrated and was taunting me. I really don't know what's so worthy of showing off about marrying a monk. What's so good about a stinky monk? Just wait until you get married and live like a widow. TSK. A couple in name only is really pitiful. Asher probably looks at Buddha statues more than he looks at you. Right? Scarlet. Give me 3 years. I promise I'll make you look at me with new eyes in 3 years. She was anxious. In the previous life, if it weren't for me, my scumbag father wouldn't have been able to make a comeback. If my scumbag father didn't make a comeback, how could she meet the Crown Prince Leo at the banquet? Without me, even if she were given 30 years, she wouldn't amount to anything. I couldn't help but smile. And my fingertips quickly swept across the keyboard. Violet. I heard that Dad remarried. Is the stepmother good to you? Anyway, we're real sisters. Tomorrow, I'll take Mom to a restaurant for a meal. Whether Mom will soften her heart towards you depends on you. After that, I also sent her the restaurant address. In the previous life, she caused my tragic death. How could I watch her live in peace this life? Not to mention 3 years. Even 3 months would be unbearable for me. With her current status, she couldn't even catch a glimpse of Leo. As her sister, of course, I had to help her. In the restaurant, Mom and I were having Western food face to face. Perhaps because the marriage alliance went smoothly. She even had a rare smile on her face. Eat more salad. When you live together in the future, remember to take care of Asher's eating habits. She was reminding me that Asher ate vegetarian food and chanted Buddha's name. So he needed to eat vegetables. I silently took note. And my peripheral vision kept glancing towards the door. It was only when I saw that familiar figure that I curled the corners of my lips. Madam, would you like to buy a flower? Madam, would you like to buy a flower? Madam, would you like to buy? When she reached our table, Violet's voice suddenly stopped, and her eyes instantly filled with tears. Sister. Mom. Mom noticed Violet, but the waiter also noticed her at the same time. Hello. Soliciting business in the store is not allowed here. Please leave. Violet, with tears in her eyes, dropped the flowers and tried to rush towards Mom. But she forgot. The woman in front of her had always cared most about her dignity. In fact, to her, it didn't matter which of her two daughters stayed. Whichever one stayed, she would carefully cultivate. And what she had invested would be returned to her in another way over time. She was indifferent and cold-hearted, with only interests in her eyes. So, how could she recognize her daughter in such a situation? Violet, please pay attention to your behavior. Mom looked at her, and her eyes were less friendly than when she looked at a stranger. But Violet didn't understand us. She had endured so much grievance from the scumbag father for such a long time, coupled with the stimulation of our marriage. She just wanted to pour out her bitterness to her mother now. Mom, can you give me some money? I really can't stand this kind of life anymore. I chose Dad not because I didn't love you, but because I couldn't bear to let my sister lead the hard life I'm living now. Mom, can you give me some money? In order to show her pain, she cried her heart out. And her voice was extremely loud. After just a few words, the piano music in the restaurant stopped. Almost everyone looked over here. Out of face-saving considerations, Mom had to take Violet to our nanny car. Mom, hasn't so still sigh. I knew you loved me the most. It doesn't have to be much. 5,000 yuan a month will be enough. I'll definitely be filial to you in the future. Slap! It was the sound of Mom slapping Violet. I lowered my eyes to hide the schadenfreude in my eyes. Violet. This fool. She had been by Mom's side for so long. But she still didn't understand her temperament. For the sake of face, she could tolerate the fact that Dad had an affair and kept a mistress. How could she allow Violet to embarrass her in front of so many people now? Violet's right cheek immediately swelled from the slap. Mom, why did you hit me? Even if you two divorced, I'm still your daughter. Right? Why can't you live a life of luxury by your side while I have to work and earn money every day? Do you only care about money? Are you going to abandon me? Your daughter. Now? Mom looked at her coldly. I've transferred your monthly alimony to the card. From the moment you left with your father, you had nothing to do with me. Don't come and disturb me in the future. After that, Mom gave me a look. I immediately understood and opened the car door. Violet stared at Mom with her neck stiffened. Presumably, she remembered what happened in the previous life, and intense hatred was churning in her eyes. How can a woman like you be worthy of being a mother? I'm coming to you now because I think highly of you. In the future, even if you want to recognize me, I won't even look at you. Mom calmly straightened her clothes and then casually looked up at her. Aren't you leaving yet? Do you want me to teach you a lesson on behalf of your father again? Violet ran away in tears, still muttering curses before she left. Mom's voice sounded in my ears. Don't be complacent. Scarlet. You should know that Mom lies for her face all her life. I nodded obediently, naturally understanding the hidden meaning in her words. If I embarrassed her in the future, she would abandon me without hesitation. As for now, compared with Violet, I'm the wealthy daughter she painstakingly cultivated, while Violet has already gone astray. She's not stupid. Naturally, she knows which one is her best choice. That afternoon, Violet sent me a lot more messages. All of them were insults. Bitch. You did it on purpose. Didn't you? Remember what you've done today. In the future, I'll make you lick my shoes and apologize. Coincidentally, I was with Asher at that time. Naturally, he saw these messages. Asher's expression turned extremely cold. I'd like to see how she can make the daughter-in-law of the Asher family lick her shoes and apologize. Seeing him protecting me like this, I smiled softly and leaned into his arms. Do you want to see how she apologizes to others first? Asher raised his eyebrows and looked at me, and I blinked playfully. I asked Asher to accompany me to the restaurant to get the surveillance video. Then I anonymously sent it to my scumbag father. That night, I went to the place according to my memory. Although my scumbag father left the marriage with nothing, he bought a lot of things for the mistress during the marriage, including this small villa. Asher's car stopped steadily not far away. After more than 10 minutes, there was first a clear sound of plates being smashed from inside. One after another. Curses followed. You ungrateful wretch. I've been raising you with great effort and you still dare to look for that bitch. What do you want to find her for? Do you want to go back? I'm raising you under pressure now and you're still yelling. I'll beat you to death today. Hey. Violet's father. Use more force. Are you not eating? I've told you long ago that your daughter is no good but you didn't believe me. How dare you stare at me? Violet's father. Give me the belt. I'll teach your daughter a lesson for you. The mixed curses of a man and a woman continued for 20 minutes without interruption. Violet was stubborn at first, but later she started crying and begging for mercy. I was wrong. Stop hitting me. Stop hitting me. It hurts so much. I don't want to go back. Please don't drive me away. I'll be very useful in the future. Believe me. Okay? Listening to Violet's sobs, I felt secretly delighted. But when I came to my senses, I found that my 2 hands were covering Asher's ears. My eyes were bright and I was concentrating on listening to the movement outside. He, on the other hand, was looking at me intently. Asher's ears gradually heated up, making my palms hot. I subconsciously withdrew my hands and explained awkwardly, "You're a person who eats vegetarian food and chants Buddha's name. I'm afraid the foul language will dirty your ears." Asher's Adam's apple bobbed up and down. "Having married you, I'll always stand by your side." That night, Violet was beaten by both of them and let out continuous screams. But for me, this was far from enough. When I estimated that her injuries were almost healed, I sent her an invitation to my wedding. At first, she looked disdainful and threw the invitation into the trash can. "Bitch. You did that on purpose last time. Right? I'm not going to attend your wedding. You slut. I hope you and that monk are locked together forever. Making you unhappy in the second half of your life." Oh? I flicked my hair, casually revealing the remaining red marks on my neck. Sure enough, Violet was stunned when she saw it. He and you. I smiled. "It doesn't matter if you don't want to come. I just invited you out of courtesy. After all the people coming to our wedding are prominent figures. You would really be out of place if you went." Violet snapped out of her daze. "Will Leo also go?" I smiled but didn't answer directly. Instead, I pointed to the trash can. "You can only get in with an invitation. You know." After I left, Violet rummaged through the trash can, retching with her hand over her nose. After finding the invitation, she danced like a madman on the street. She thought her knight in shining armor was finally coming. But she didn't know that the prince was best at destroying the beauty. On the wedding day, Asher and I stood in front of the guests in the marquee and took our vows. We would be faithful to each other for a lifetime. Asher looked at me, and there was actually a glimmer of moisture in his cold eyes. After the oath, he took my hand and weaved through our relatives and friends. With him around, not a single purse and air to force me to drink. But halfway through the toasting, I saw Violet sitting at the same table as the prince. Leo's eyes were almost glued to Violet. Both my sister and I inherited our mother's eyebrows, eyes, and bone structure. And we both resembled Leo's first love to some extent. Since I got married this time, Leo's attention naturally shifted entirely to Violet. Although Violet pretended to be calm, her flushed face was enough to prove her inner ecstasy. Having been tormented for a long time, I couldn't help feeling a bit of physical discomfort when I saw Leo. Even though Asher was holding my hand, my fingertips still trembled uncontrollably. In the aristocratic families, there are too many ways to torment people. The force-feeding method of gaining 10 pounds in 3 days was just the most insignificant part. Leo loved this face that resembled his first love the most. And he wouldn't touch it. But below the neck, he tried every means to torture me. The first time I saw that shameful wall filled with torture tools, I couldn't stop trembling. By then, it was too late for me to run. My scumbag father and stepmother had already sold me to Leo. In my previous life, I once tried to run home, But my scumbag father tied me with a chain and handed the rope to Leo. That night, he turned off all the surveillance cameras on the way home. He pulled the rope and made me crawl back on my knees step by step. Asher gently squeezed my fingertips to bring me back to my senses. Scarlet. I don't know when these cold eyes had become one of the sources of my sense of security. The things in the previous life were in the past. Violet tried every means to be with the prince. And of course, I would do my best to help. Since she was eager to fall into hell, how could I not give her a push? The next time we met was at my mother's birthday party. Leo was holding Violet's hand. My scumbag father was putting his arm around the mistress's shoulder, and the four-member family appeared at the party together. Violet came here on purpose to show off. She casually stretched out her hand, and the tinkling accessories on her wrist were all of great value. Mom, oh no, Auntie. Happy birthday. I originally wanted to give you a birthday gift, but then I remembered the words you said to me last time. I thought it was better to forget it. After all, our mother-daughter relationship is gone. Right? My scumbag father chuckled twice, still with his arm around the mistress's shoulder. The mistress also curled the corners of her lips, looking like a small-minded person who had achieved success. Sister, it's your birthday today. Why aren't you happy? Sister, I'll give you a set of beauty devices. In the future, you should take good care of your face. After all, women age quickly as they get older. And when they age quickly, they are naturally more likely to be disliked by men. This was the first time I saw my mother being put in a difficult position. Because of the prince's power. My mother didn't want to have an argument with this family. But I wasn't afraid. How could I miss this opportunity to show my loyalty to my mother? I slapped the mistress across the face with a loud slap. Because of the loud noise. This slap attracted the attention of the whole audience. Scarlet. My father was so angry that his face turned red and his neck thickened. Anyway, having so filled my head, sorry. She's your stepmother. How could you hit an elder? That's right. Sister. We came here with good intentions to give gifts. Why do you hit people at every turn? Just because our mom is rich. You don't recognize this dad anymore? Leo also slightly frowned. He sized me up, and that look unconsciously reminded me of the shadows left in my previous life. I gritted my teeth, straightened my back, and stared back at him. Leo, it's our fault if the hospitality is not good. But today is my mother's birthday. And no mistress is allowed to show off here. Leo laughed, looked at my mother, and then turned back to look at the mistress. He said frivolously, aren't they both moms? What's the difference between the main one and the side one? Come on. Call her mom too. Let me hear it. Violet raised her eyebrows and looked at me, her eyes full of pride. Call her Scarlet. Listening to our Leo can double your family's business. Isn't this much more cost-effective than your arranged marriage? I looked at her coldly, and the corners of my lips curled up. Just as I was about to speak, a hand suddenly touched my waist. Asher appeared behind me at some point, with a faint smile on his lips. He looked at Leo. Haven't seen you for half a year. Since when did you have a hobby of recognizing moms? Sorry. My wife is clean living and can't stand dirty things. You can keep this, Mom, for yourselves to call. Although Leo was jokingly called the prince, the Asher family was by no means inferior. When Asher spoke, Leo could only force a smile. Just kidding. Why are you so protective? Asher's hand on my waist tight and a bit, and he motioned to Violet with his chin. This is my wife. It's normal to be protective. But who is this one to you? As soon as these words were spoken, Violet, who had been smiling just now, couldn't hold her smile anymore. After all, there is a certain gap between a girlfriend and a legal wife. I turned around and met Asher's eyes, feeling warm in my heart. So, this is what it feels like to be protected. After the birthday party, on the way back, I fell into deep thought. Violet was hateful, but Leo, who had hurt me deeply in my previous life, was also unforgivable. I didn't want to let either of them go. What are you thinking about? Asher said softly, waking me up from my trance. In the future, if someone makes you unhappy, just retort in time. If you don't even have this right, isn't it a waste of our arranged marriage? Asher was smiling as he spoke, obviously trying to amuse me. But I looked at him seriously. What if I want to do more than just retort? Asher turned to look at me. His eyes were deep, and there were emotions in them that I couldn't understand. But after a moment of eye contact, Asher stretched out his fist to me. I smiled, raised my fist, and bumped it against his. Do whatever you want. Thinking of all the things in my previous life, I said word by word. Bring down Leo, and the entire Leo family. Strangely enough, Asher just raised his eyebrows and agreed. He never asked a single word about my unexplained hostility. Although I was curious, this wasn't the time to be suspicious. The next day, Asher started to help me investigate the Leo family. In my previous life, I was the official Mrs. Leo. Although I lived a life worse than that of a beast, I still had a certain understanding of the Leo family. I gave Asher a direction, and just a few words made his brows furrow deeply. With my help, Violet and Leo finally got married. Violet specially sent me a photo of their marriage certificate to show off. See? I bet right. I said that in the future, I would make you kneel down and apologize to me. Scarlet, my good days are yet to come. And your retribution has just begun. I smiled. It seemed that she still knew nothing about Leo's first love. I replied with a smile. Pray for your own good. Judging from Leo's impatient personality, he should have been eager to act long ago. Half a month later, we ran into each other at an auction. As I expected, Violet's figure now is exactly the same as mine in my last life. The moment she saw me, she gritted her teeth and wanted to rush over. That look was identical to the expression on her face when she hit me with a car and killed me in my last life. But with just one glance from Leo, she abruptly stopped her actions. I looked at her with a smile. Although it was quite hot indoors, she was wearing a long-sleeved dress and had a silk scarf around her neck. I walked up to her with a beaming smile. Your silk scarf is crooked. Let me adjust it for you. Before I could reach out my hand, Violet stepped back half a step in extreme nervousness. The well-arranged silk scarf was knocked loose by her instead. As the silk scarf slipped, the purple and blue marks on her neck were revealed. I deliberately exclaimed, "Oh my God! Sister! What happened to your neck?" I deliberately spoke loudly. And the people around also looked over in our direction. Violet nervously tugged the silk scarf around her neck, and Leo glared at me viciously. I'm going to the bathroom." Violet walked away in a flurry of steps, and Leo followed closely behind. Those who could come to the auction were all important and influential people, and they had seen a lot. With just a glance at each other, they basically understood what was going on. In less than 10 minutes, the news of Leo's domestic violence spread like wildfire at the scene. When they came back, Violet's eyes were obviously red and swollen, and Leo's tie was loosened. Are you okay? Do you need me to do anything for you? Violet stared at me, and her hands hanging by her sides couldn't stop trembling. Taking advantage of the fact that there were not many people around, she gritted her teeth and questioned me. Why? Did you know he had mental problems long ago? Why did you watch me jump into this bit of fire? Aren't we real sisters? Do you want me to die? Since she had torn off the last fig leaf, I had no need to hide anymore. The smile on my face disappeared, and I looked at her coldly. Compared to you running me over with a car and killing me, I've already been more than kind. Violet was shocked. Her pupils gradually dilated. And then she exclaimed without caring about her image. You! Help! There's a ghost. She kept backing away and stepped directly on Leo's foot. I watched as he pinched her waist hard. What are you going crazy about again? Huh? Wife? Violet seemed to be caught by the throat and didn't dare to move. I walked over with a smile, looking at her and then at Leo. Sister. Brother-in-law. I have a big gift for you later. Especially for you. Brother-in-law. I'm sure you'll like it. After the auction started, Leo was constantly competing with Asher both openly and secretly. I watched from the side. Every time, I would raise the price 3 or 4 times and then give it to Leo. After a few rounds, this fool finally stopped. But he was completely enraged and even turned around in public and gave us the middle finger. Asher and I looked at each other and smiled in unison. When the last finale item was being auctioned, the host took out a stack of documents. This is a top-notch scoop we just got today. It involves someone, perhaps even a certain family among those present. The starting price is 1 yuan. As soon as these words were spoken, the whole audience was in an uproar. Leo, who was sitting in the front, seemed to sense something and even turned around and glared at me. 1 million. Everyone was initially hesitant about this item. But a few million yuan was nothing to those truly wealthy people. With Leo taking the lead and bidding, everyone seemed to sense something. And more people started to follow suit. In the end, the price was even bid up to 150 million yuan. Leo wanted to continue increasing the bid, but he was powerless. After all, he had just bought several useless items at prices several times higher than the market price. 150 million yuan once. 150 million yuan twice. 150 million yuan 3 times. Sold. The host gave the documents to the person who had won the bid on the spot and deliberately teased. Can you give us a hint about what the gossip is? Everyone joined in the heckling and the person reluctantly opened the documents. I could see his pupils tremble even from a long distance. Leo selecting concubines. The whole audience was in an uproar. Asher and I looked at each other and laughed together. Leo, feeling guilty and enraged, started shouting and yelling at the auction site and then wanted to leave. But before he could reach the door, police officers appeared simultaneously at the 3 doors of the auction hall. Based on a report, you are suspected of imprisonment and participating in group orgies. Please come with us. Leo sneered. On what grounds? Do you have evidence? Do you know that I'm from the Leo family? I'm putting my hand right here. Dare you put handcuffs on me? The next second, there was a click. The police officer said with a serious face. We found 6 imprisoned girls in the villa under your name. Each of them has injuries of varying degrees. Leo was directly taken away, and Violet was still in a state of confusion. After the event ended, I walked up to her and found that she was acting strange. She was sitting there in a daze, sometimes looking happy, and sometimes crying with her face covered. Violet. You. Before I could finish my words, Violet suddenly stood up and lunged at me. I could have dodged, but I deliberately didn't move. Asher was outside, and he wouldn't let anything happen to me. Sure enough, when I woke up, I was in the hospital, and Violet was in the police station. As soon as I opened my eyes, I met Asher's slightly angry face. He checked my head again. After making sure I was okay, he gritted his teeth and questioned me. I watched the surveillance. Why didn't you dodge? If I hadn't gone in time, you would have been strangled to death by that crazy woman. Do you know that? I know you wanted to send her in. You could have left it to me. Why did you have to put yourself in danger? What if something really happened to you? Scarlet. You really. I hooked my hand around Asher's neck and pressed my lips against his. The words he didn't finish were swallowed back. After a long time, I moved my lips away. Don't think this means I'll forgive you. You. I kissed him on the lips again. Asher. Do you like me? Why? This was something I had always been puzzled about. We had only just met in this life. How could he like me? Asher looked at me for a long time. And finally, he hugged me into his arms. I was a bit confused. But he was holding me so tightly that I could hardly breathe. Tell me quickly. I tried to break free from his embrace but couldn't. What's wrong? When I was a child, there was a fire. And you saved me. Remember? I was stunned and then suddenly realized. You're that taciturn boy? He let out a muffled hem. Do you believe in past and present lives? In the past life both you and I were unfortunate. It's just, I thought I was marrying you, but it turned out to be Violet. And your marriage partner was Leo. The hand he was using to hold me got tighter and tighter and tighter. And his voice was choked with a hint of vulnerability. I knew that Asher, like me, had also come back. Asher. I believe. He knew all the sufferings I had endured in the past life. I rubbed against Asher's arms and reached out to hug his back. Fortunately, having fulfilled my obsession. In this life, we've set things right. After being discharged from the hospital, I first went to the detention center to see Leo. And I brought someone with me. I heard that he had been refusing to plead guilty. The moment he saw me, he became emotional and started cursing. I'm really unlucky to have met you. Don't think that just because you married Asher I can't do anything to you. I'm telling you. There's nothing in this world that money can't solve. When I get out, I'll kill you. I didn't say anything. But the person behind me chuckled lightly, with a strong sense of disappointment. Leo frowned, but when he saw the person behind me, he was completely stunned. Rosa. Rosa. Why are you here? Don't look at me. This is just a misunderstanding. When I get out, can we meet again? Rosa was Leo's first love. We got in touch a week ago. Leo is the kind of person who doesn't care about anything. Wasn't he infatuated with love? Then we'd use the right strong medicine. Rosa looked at him disappointed. Lie. Originally, when others told me about you like this, I didn't believe it. But now I do. Did you really participate in group orgies? Just because they had a shadow of me. You, out of unrequited love for me, tortured others like this? Leo. I feel like I've never really seen you clearly. You're terrifying like this. You'd better plead guilty and accept the law. Don't say I'm your first love anymore. Such words make me feel sick. With just a few words from Rosa, Leo slumped down there as if he had lost his soul. Looking at his dejected appearance, I wished I could go in and skin him alive. Leo pleaded guilty. With his confession, more and more scandals of the Leo family were exposed. The one-stop tour enterprise at the top of the pyramid collapsed overnight. Later, I went to see Violet. She stared at me for a long time. And finally, she actually said, "Can you give me another chance?" What? You killed me. Kill me this time. Okay? Let's choose again. This time I want to choose Mom. I already know how to win. This is simply absurd. People like you can't even make a good path forward even with a script. Why should I restart life with you? You probably don't know yet. Because of your domineering behavior at the birthday party. Mom was touched by my actions and has now completely handed the company over to me. I have a man and a career. Why would I want to restart? Violet went crazy. She shook the railing frantically and finally fell under the prison guard's electric baton. When I came out, Asher was still waiting for me outside. After getting rid of all the trash, I could finally cast off the shackles on me and walk towards Asher with light steps. Go home? Yeah. Go home. Some people have rotted to the core. But our beautiful journey has just begun. The end.